Good evening and welcome to our first Shocker Table Talk with parents this fall, spring, summer semester. Time has already gone by so quick. My name is Alicia Newell and I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs here at Wichita State. And I am really excited to meet with you all and share information and just really be a resource to help answer any questions that you all have as your students prepare to transition to Wichita State. My role for the university is I oversee assessment and student retention within the Division of Student Affairs. But in short, my role is really, I'm kind of like the mom for campus. And so when students engage with either being homesick or if there's any kind of other issues or challenges that they experience, my team and I, we are on standby to help get them through any of those challenges. And so we'll talk a little bit more later on about that. But with me are some other colleagues. I've been with the university a little over 15 years. I'm a first generation student, also a proud alumni of Wichita State. And so I encourage you all that throughout today's session, if you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will respond to them as they come in. So let me turn this over to my colleague Kim Sandlin and Gina Crabtree to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with today's program.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Sandlin. I serve as the Director of Student Success and have been at the university 23 years. First generation student, attended Wichita State, so I'm a proud Shocker alum as well. And I'm excited to be part of these programs that we're bringing to families of our Shockers. A lot of you are probably, we're assuming parents of brand new students to Wichita State. So we are glad you have joined us. If your student is a continuing student, that's cool too. Usually there are some things that you learn along the way. Sometimes it doesn't stick the first time, and we totally get that. So we've had a couple of orientation programs this summer. So we know that possibly some of you we've seen online before, and others may be brand new to this series of programs. So we'll have these scheduled throughout the summer. Each night is a different topic, and so you can see that schedule on the parent and family website that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later as well. So there it is on your screen. So all right, and I'll pop it over to Gina so she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Crabtree. I'm the University Registrar here at Wichita State. I'm also a first-generation college student, and I received my graduate degree here at Wichita State, so also a proud alum. I've worked here for over 25 years at WSU, so Shocker through and through. Have one child who got 3 degrees from WSU and another who's already telling me he's going to WSU, so we're a big Shocker family. And very excited to be with you all today to hopefully help your family as you learn more about Wichita State and enter with the fall class. So I think I'm up first on the agenda. Do you guys want me to start, or are there other intro comments that you want to make?
Go for it.
Ready to go? Okay. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to briefly go through some things that are not necessarily super exciting in terms of, some of the come to campus really cool stuff, but important information for families to have. And that topic is what we lovingly refer to as FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And so you'll see there, we've got a website, wichita.edu/FERPA. That's a place where you can go at any time and get more information about FERPA and how it's implemented on our campus. The basics of FERPA is it's the law that identifies the security of student education records. And FERPA doesn't only apply to universities, it applies to institutions of education K through college. And when our students, our children are in elementary through high school, the rights to their education records belong to us as parents. But once a student hits the age of 18, or enters an institution of higher education. So even if one of your students is going to be starting this fall and isn't quite 18 yet, this still applies. Once they reach one of those markers, the rights to their education records become their own. They take ownership of that record. So what that means for Wichita State is that we obviously enforce that law in regards to the way that we handle student records. FERPA gives students the rights to review and inspect their records if they have a request to do so. Students can usually see everything they need to see about their record through the online portals we have, My WSU portal. Students can also have, to a certain extent, control over who gets access to their records, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the students also have the right to request an amendment to their record if they think something is in error, and so they work that out with the registrar's office. This doesn't mean they come to the registrar's office if they thought they deserved a different grade in a class, but it does mean if we had that they attended a community college that they did not attend, they would let us know we have an error, and then we would seek to make that amendment and work with the student to correct their record. So those are the basic rights a student has under FERPA. I want to show you, so I'll share my screen here quickly and make sure that I'm doing this right. Here we go. You should all be seeing the web page here. So again, this is wichita.edu/FERPA. And there's a lot of information here. We're not going to go over that. But one of the things that I wanted to really bring your attention to, again, this information about disclosure of education records, it's an important one for parents and families to take a look at. So I encourage you to do that. Again, to synopsize it, kind of bottom line for you, students really get to decide who has access to their records within certain limits. And ultimately, the disclosure of records is to school officials like myself who have a legitimate educational interest. And then there's some other things. And ultimately, we cannot provide information about a student's record to any third party without the express written consent of that student. And parents, my friends, we are third parties. Parents are third parties under FERPA. So sometimes we don't really like to hear that, but it is accurate under the law. So what that means is that if a student wants to share their record with another party, usually they send an official transcript to that party, to a scholarship awarding agency or some other organization that needs a copy of their record. But if we receive a request from a third party, including parents, asking us for information about a student's record, we really have to respond with, we're not able to provide information without the student's express written consent. And again, that does apply to parents. So what we try to do in the registrar's office is really help parents and families to achieve their goals as they're looking to figure out, how am I going to get information about my student's record? I'm the one paying the bill, perhaps. And so there are a couple of exceptions to the third, we must have express written consent. Again, as I mentioned, one of those exceptions is the folks that work on campus, but it's important for you to know that not every person who works at Wichita State has access to your student's record. Another exception would be directory information. So on this same website, if I continue to scroll down, you'll see a link for directory information. FERPA says that we cannot provide information to a third party without the student's consent, except if it's directory information. So Wichita State, like every university, has identified what we consider to be directory information. And on this link from our FERPA website, you can read all of the items that are considered to be directory information. So that means that if we received an inquiry about a student and it was really, hey, is this student enrolled or not? Well, enrollment status is part of directory information. So we could answer that question, no matter who the caller is, without getting the student's permission. So it's important for you, again, as you look over the FERPA information, be helpful for you to look at what directory information is and be able, be familiar with that. Now, students do have a right to block the disclosure of even directory information, and they can do that with my office. And each fall, we send an email out to students, making sure they're aware of their FERPA rights and providing them information about how they can block FERPA disclosures, even directory disclosures, if they so choose to do that. Okay, so then what does that all mean, and how can families get the information they need? What I always tell parents is the best way for you to get information about your student's record is from your student. And we have a system on campus that makes it really easy for your student to provide the ability for you to access certain records through an online portal without, at any time, day or night, without too much trouble. And we call that the Proxy system. So wichita.edu/Proxy, as you'll see there, is another quick link website for us. And you can see, I'm going to go right back to sharing this screen. Let me show you just a little bit about that, and then I'll stop with the sharing here. So at wichita.edu/proxy, there's all kinds of information again here about what a proxy is, how it works, again, links to our FERPA page. And we have a very specific set of instructions for the student, how to set up a proxy, for the proxy themselves. And then we have information down here that tells you and the student what information is shared based on what authorization options. So let me back up and tell you that the proxy system really is as simple as a student logs in to their MyWSU, and they go to the proxy system and they say, I want my mom to be my proxy, and they enter mom's email address and some information there, and then they get to check some boxes. I want my mom to be able to see this information, my schedule, my financial aid. There's all kinds of authorization options, which again are detailed on that proxy page. And so a student checks those boxes, and once that happens, a couple of emails will be sent to the proxy, to that email address that they entered, and it tells the proxy again how you go about setting up your password, provides you with the link that you will use to access the system anytime in the future now that you have your password set up. And then you log in there and you can see the information that the student has given you the authorization to see. And you're seeing it through some self-service pages, as we call them. You're seeing exactly what the student would see. So if you are given authorization to see the student's financial aid award page, you're seeing exactly what that student sees. Now, you can't do anything. Some of those pages, if you were the student, their student can enter information or update, or the proxy can't edit anything there, but they can view. So talk with your students. Again, this is the best way for you to work out ahead of time what and how you're going to get access to student information. Talk to your students about setting up a proxy. Look at the proxy website and the instructions together. Students can provide you with a printout of information if they want to. You all decide proxy is not what's right for your family. So there are other ways that students can do that. But proxy is certainly one way where students can set the authorizations, and then the rest is up to the proxy to log in and look at what they have been given access to. Anytime, day or night, you can access that information if you're set up as a proxy. Another piece of information regarding proxies is students can set up what's called a passphrase. And it can be a word or a phrase. And essentially what that is that one of the options the student can check among the boxes is, I give permission for WSU to talk with my proxy, if they know the passphrase, about the things that I've authorized them to view. So not only could that proxy view information about the schedule, for instance, but if the student checked the box about giving access to, or giving us the permission to speak with the proxy, that proxy could call the registrar's office and we verify, yes, the student has given that authorization. The proxy tells us the passphrase is tulips are red. And then we can actually have a conversation with the parent, because you have essentially authenticated with us as a proxy that we have permission to talk with you about specifically the items that have been approved. So that's also really helpful for us, again, as we work to help out parents and families and get information there. Let's see, there's a question I see. We have 2 kids at WSU in the fall. I have proxy for one, but not sure how the second one works. So each parent has to have their own email address and be set up as separate proxies if they want to log in separately. But one proxy, one mom, can have multiple students set them up. So the student goes into proxy, the second student, and simply enters the exact same email address that student number 1 entered. And so then when the proxy logs in, they'll see you are a proxy for Susie and you're a proxy for Samuel, and you'll see what each of those students has authorized you to see. A couple other reminders, I guess, before I stop talking and see if there are other questions or things that Kim or Alicia want me to cover. And that is, it's really not appropriate for us as parents to be contacting instructors, calling faculty, how's my daughter doing in your class? The faculty member should say to you, I really can't share information about a student's progress in my class with anyone but the student. And that's true. Now, you might say, but my students authorize me. I'm set up as a proxy. And while that may be true, a faculty member's conversation is not part of student's education record. And FERPA, while it allows us to release information, disclose information, again, based on permissions and other things, it does not require it. So FERPA says we may release information. If I received a call, for instance, I mentioned earlier, someone could call and say, hey, is Susie enrolled? That's directory information, and I can release it as long as Susie didn't block the disclosure of directory information. But if anything about that call or that inquiry feels off to me, I can simply refuse to provide that information. So when we talk about faculty, again, it's really best that you encourage a student to talk with their faculty member if they have questions, and again, ask your student for information about how they're doing in class, and again, work out together how you're going to provide information to, how students can provide information to the parents who care and who sometimes, again, are paying that bill and feel like, yeah, I want to have that information and access to just check on what the schedule is or where the financial aid is. I will also add, lastly, sorry, this is really as the last, there are no check boxes in the proxy for student accounts, except for one that, again, allows a student to discuss their billing. But you can't view billing information within our self-service proxy pages. Students would have to set you up as a guest user in the student account suite, our TouchNet. So that is separate. I just wanted to make that clear. But there are pages, again, for all kinds of student information, academic side, so to speak, as well as then the financial aid pages. Okay, gals, I'm fast talker, I know. Other questions that have come in or things?
Yeah, there was another question that came in, Gina. Will I be notified if my student has an emergency, even if I'm not a proxy?
So FERPA allows for disclosure of information if it, in the case of an emergency. So it depends. Not everything is, an emergency, but if there's a health and safety issue, then yes, we can contact and provide information regardless of whether there's a proxy or student consent. There are a couple other exceptions. Again, if you check out wichita.edu/FERPA, you can read through those exceptions. Another one is if a student is found to be in violation of the student code of conduct related to drugs or alcohol, then we can make a disclosure without having the student's permission. So again, that doesn't mean that every student who maybe gets found with a, can of beer in the residence hall is going to have their mom called. But what that does provide is opportunity for the folks in Housing and Residence Life who will have policies related to these kinds of things in the conduct office. It does provide them with an opportunity if there's a progressive behavior that is being seen and there's concern when a student is found in violation of that FERPA does allow for that disclosure. So again, check out some of those exceptions. Certainly, again, Alicia might be able to speak to a little bit more. There's other kinds of emergencies that families or parents certainly can be contacted under FERPA. Okay, I think
I think Gina hit on some really great things, and it's the important thing that we cannot express enough is the importance of communicating with your student and what that expectation is, especially when it comes to grades. For myself, I'm a parent, and many of you have your phone on, and I'm constantly checking and looking at my students' grades and saying, hey, where's this missing assignment? What happened, on, this test or quiz? And so going from that accountability piece with your student and knowing we're shifting from moving and doing, right, to now we're coaching, and then we're moving to the sidelines, and now we're completely cutting the reins loose. And that's probably one of the hardest lessons that we as parents have to do is, when Gina said, mom and dad, don't call the instructors and talk to them about students' grades, because they can't. It's not that we don't want you to, but really college is all about helping your students to advocate for themselves and become the individual that they were created to be. And so when, we step in and we're doing those things for our students, we're not helping them to get to that space and place that we want them to be at before they exit Wichita State. And so maybe just practicing some of those conversations with them and asking them and really setting those expectations and boundaries. One of the things that I constantly get from parents all the time is my students won't give me access to view my grades. And I always laugh And I'm like, yeah, like, I hear it all the time. And so I always say, use your leverage. What do you have? And I'm like, do they have a car? Do you pay for this, that, their phone? Well, yeah, okay. So if you're not going to give me access, well, guess what? I need the keys to your car. I need this because if I'm investing all of this in you, I need you to also make sure that I can hold you accountable for what we signed up to do, because it's truly a partnership of making sure that you're aware of where and what your student is experiencing and going through. But in addition, being able to hold them accountable if they get off track. And so I love when I post in our Shocker Family Network Facebook page, hey, grades are posted, who's checked grades? And they're like, ooh, I just took away my students' keys. And not to make it punitive, but really making sure that it's an opportunity that your student knows that you're there and you support them. And that it's important to you to make sure that you're there to help them with their transition and all of that good stuff. So thanks, Gina. Any other questions for Gina? Feel free to drop them in the chat. She'll stick around for a couple minutes to answer any other questions that may come up. But we're going to go.
Sorry to interrupt you, but can I just tell you something else you made me think of? I think it's important, as you talked about, you're checking assignments and stuff. The kinds of grades that Proxy can view in our system are not assignment grades. The only kind of access that can be given for a Proxy related to grades is end of semester final grades. So that's also important. Students can see their assignment grades in Blackboard, our learning management system, assuming the instructor is utilizing Blackboard, which most are. But that is a really important, as you're saying, it's an important shift and transition, not only from, okay, I won't be able to see, all of this different kind of information, but even if a student wanted to, there's no ability to provide information about assignment grades, because those kinds of things don't exist in our student information system and our banner. They only exist in Blackboard. So a student can't provide that kind of access. So if they give you access to view grades, it's viewing the final grade of each course.
Great distinction, Gina. Yes. And I think that's something that Kim and I share a lot with our parents, is that when students come home for fall break, for spring break, for Christmas break, Thanksgiving, is to ask them to open up their Blackboard account and show you, how they're doing in classes. And that definitely helps to kind of ease some of that, tension that parents are like, well, I don't know what I'm seeing. And then they're able to kind of see at that time how their students performing academically. So absolutely.
I'm going to jump in here while we're on the subject of grades, because I think a lot of students are caught off guard that we have a plus minus grading system. And that is a different GPA levels. 4.0 is an A, but an A minus is not a 4.0. And I think that for our extremely motivated students, even for those that may not be extremely motivated, that's a surprise. And I think they need to be prepared for that, because that's really, really different. It's not a 90, 80, 70, 60 kind of scale anymore. And so depending on what your expectations are of your student, if you expect all A's, does that mean an A minus counts or not? And so make sure that those conversations are things that you all are having with your student now. They're going to want to know how many times you expect them or how many times they have to check in with you. So having that conversation is also important. If you expect them to call every day, they will probably think or might think that that's a little excessive. Some might need that and want that, and that's awesome. You just need to communicate that to each other so that you know how many times they're going to be contacting you, and the opposite is true as well, because a lot of times we'll have students, Alicia shares a great example in orientation where a student is not responding to the text messages until, the parent says, guess what, we're buying you a new car. And they're like, really? And they're like, no, but you're not not communicating with me, so I need to get your attention somehow. So that communication is key. Not too early to begin to work on that with your students right now. Or for those of you who may be parents and families of continuing students, same thing. Reflect on this past year. We know it was a year like no other. So correct, given. Okay, fine. But now moving forward, as things are changing, perhaps maybe they're not at home as much anymore. So what does that change? What does that look like? What is the expectation? Are you going to be continuing to send them money? If so, when? How often? How much? How much do you expect them to be contributing to their own purchases and expenses? That's another big conversation to have, I think. Students a lot of times have no idea how much college costs. And until we begin to break it down for them, I've seen a lot of students go, I had no idea my parents were paying this much for my college education, or I had no idea that this much wasn't covered by my financial aid that then my parents had to pick up, right? And so those realities are really important for students to learn early, meaning A, they need to appreciate the bill paying that you all are doing for them. But B, they really a life skill in finances, communication, responsibility, asking for help, asking questions, scheduling their own appointments, those kinds of things. If they're not used to doing that, you all may need to help them a little bit. As Alicia was saying, maybe you don't make the phone call to the professor, but maybe if they feel like they need your help and support, maybe you're in the room with them. And if they get stuck, you can help them along the way and say, did you ask about this? Or we have lots of students who we hear the parents in the background saying, ask them about how much that costs, or ask them when this is out. And that's fine. We actually prefer that, but we need to have sometimes that conversation with your student in order to be able to get the questions asked and answered for both you and your student. So that's why we really push on making sure you're communicating, you have clear expectations. All of that is really set before the school year begins. This will be another interesting new year. We've learned a lot over the past year, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And we're all kind of taking the best of all of that, right? Pre-pandemic, during pandemic, now moving into post-pandemic. We're trying to blend that all together for what that looks like now, a better experience for our students, and making sure that we're really meeting them where they are and meeting you where you are when it's convenient for you, helping you kind of navigate back to the sidelines and move in when you need to and back away when you need to and get involved when you need to. So that's all kind of part of this process.
And I want to touch on one thing that Gina also shared about. I think there was a question that was asked about emergency contacts. And so first, our continuing families is really important, especially if your student is moving off campus or maybe will be living somewhere different this next academic year. Is making sure that they are updating their record with their current address, also their emergency contact, because if something does happen, we do make those notifications, and unfortunately we make far more than what we ever want to make. But if this student does not list any emergency contacts in their file, then we have no way in order to get a hold of those individuals. And so making sure that you have the conversation. In addition, asking your student who they're listing as their emergency contact. I think as parents, we often assume that they're going to list us, right? And what I have found or recently experienced is that we had a student who listed a friend as an emergency contact, and that friend did not know who their parents were or any family members. And so when it came time in contacting them because an issue was arise, they're like, well, I don't know who their parents are. And by the time the parent was brought into the picture, the parent was really frustrated, and rightfully so. As a mom myself, I would have been frustrated and upset but the student did not give us that information. We had no parent information on file. And so it's really important to make sure that that information is updated every semester, so that if for whatever reason that call has to be made, we have that information available at our fingertips.
I think that brings us to a close on the FERPA emergency contact communication topic. So Gina, did you want to add in a little something before we're done? Move on?
Yes, I would just say to Alicia's point that just for general awareness, everything we talk about when we talk about online services and what students can do, not what the proxies, but students, is through our portal at mywsu.wichita.edu. And on the students' home tab in MyWSU is a student tools channel, which is the box. And in that is a link where they can update their address information with us and the emergency contact. So just want to re-emphasize what Alicia said about doing that and encouraging students to do that, and share a little bit about where that is. Students can also find all kinds of valuable links to get them to the registration and all kinds of great stuff in MyWSU. One more that parents are often interested in is a link to get an enrollment verification and a good student certificate. So they can click on that link and be authenticated directly to our partner, National Student Clearinghouse. And a student can generate that good student certificate that sometimes parents or students need to provide to auto insurers, for instance, so they can get a good student discount. So all of those kinds of links are found within MyWSU. And if at any time a student is looking for something and they can't find it, they can certainly contact the registrar's office or any student success. All of our offices certainly can help students with that. And now I'm done.
I also wanted to point out before we move on, have your students, when they're updating that, update their cell phone or their phone number. That's step one. Step two is clearing out their voicemails. Step three is actually setting up a voicemail. So we call students a lot, but we are unable to leave messages, much like you probably are, because their voicemail's full, they haven't set up their voicemail, they have a new cell phone number. And so we do lots of outreach for all kinds of reasons, trying to help students anticipate potential pitfalls, or, hey, this deadline is coming up, but we noticed you haven't taken care of this, please do so. But we cannot make contact with them. I'm sure you feel our frustration here. We want to, but they need to have their voicemail set up. So that's just something from years of calling students and more and more and more often recently, not being able to even leave a message for your student, because we're going to connect with your student first, and then we'll connect with you if there is a problem or a concern. But we're going to be, reaching out to them. So if you can help us with that, that would be awesome. And that'll help them be receiving timely information as well. So, all right. I think that brings this topic to a close. Any other final comments on that before we move on to our next one?
Thank you, Miss Gina Crabtree, for joining us tonight. And again, if parents or family members have any questions or anything regarding FERPA proxy, just go to the websites that are provided. This will also save on YouTube, and we will have it posted on our social media pages. So if you missed those websites, they will be posted later. We'll also make sure that we highlight them in our upcoming newsletter so that families will be able to have that information at their fingertips as well. So thanks, Gina, for joining us. And now we are moving on to technology.
Yes. So this is a common topic that we get, especially because of this whole past year, right? So what devices are needed? What will my student need? A laptop? Will they be able, what's available to them? So a great place to start is wichita.edu/remote student. And this will walk your students through 4 steps. The first one is check your tech. It really kind of outlines the minimum needs. I would say, from what we understand from our academic partners in the academic colleges, fine art, if you have a student who is in fine arts, I believe they need a Mac. If they are not in fine arts, they can pretty much use what they need, what they have, as long as the processing power is relatively updated, new, and powerful. So if your student has a computer at home or a laptop that's laggy, or it's just kind of old, and when they start getting older, they don't respond as fast, and all of that. We don't require a specific kind of laptop or PC or anything like that. Some colleges will have unique software, engineering perhaps, but those the software your student may need will be available in a computer lab that they would be able to access. So if it's a software program that is not very common, might be expensive, have them check out the labs that are available in their academic units and see if they can get access to those labs when they need it, to work on their assignments and all of that good stuff. There is lab space on campus, although the use of those lab spaces are decreasing a little bit because more and more students are bringing laptops, which makes sense. But sometimes it's nice to go into a lab that has maybe a faster processor or whatnot. So it's a great place to start. It'll give you some general, again, outlines of the applications that we use, mainly if your students are in any kind of hybrid situation where they're flipping a couple of classes online for the week or something like that, where typically the classroom is using Zoom and Teams. Those are the top two. Zoom, I would say, is probably a little more common. And depending on if your student is a traditional freshman coming in, they might or might not be familiar with Zoom. They might or might not be familiar with Teams. So you want to make sure that they know just the basics of both of those applications. So maybe you want to do a couple of practice Zoom calls or Teams. They should have the most recent version on their computers, which also doesn't require them to have a microphone and a camera, but it's very helpful. And so sometimes when you're looking at laptops or you're looking at PCs, you want to make sure that you have a quality microphone and webcam if you can. And before you purchase anything, make sure that you check out the Shocker store. They have a lot of really great discounts for students, educational discounts that you might not be able to find off campus. And so we've got some reps from different Dell or Apple or whatever, that will come in and offer our students a little bit of a discount, because we know the investment in higher education is a great one, meaning large. So make sure that you're taking advantage of those. And then I did see
I would add something to that, Kim, is that in addition, if you are to purchase a laptop or computer from the Shocker store, a really good thing is that if they say, hey, I'm an engineering student, a lot of times they already can anticipate. Sorry, seasonal allergies, but they can anticipate the software needs that the student will need throughout their undergraduate experience with us. And so a lot of times they'll be able to give you an estimate with and without some of those software programs on the computer, which is really nice. And so some of them are things that they are not going to need right away, and others it may be. And so it's nice just to be able to have that. And someone who can give that really direct knowledge of this is what you're looking for within that time frame while your student's here with us. So when in doubt, it doesn't hurt to ask. I think so. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna I think perhaps Gina's answer to the question got posted in the chat. In case it didn't, Blackboard, let's talk a little bit about Blackboard. Blackboard is our learning management system. And basically what that means is that that's where their classwork is contained. The portal has access to resources and info, like in Gina's comment, but Blackboard is where they find their classes. And so the portal will often have a link to Blackboard, which is great. But really, students should go to blackboard.wichita.edu. And we just got a huge upgrade in Blackboard to Blackboard Ultra, which doesn't really mean anything to you all. It means a lot to us, but it doesn't necessarily mean a lot to you all if you haven't seen it before. But I do want to mention that not every professor uses Blackboard. I would say professors use it inconsistently, I guess is the best way. A lot of professors will use it for everything, and they post all kinds of stuff, and they have active discussion boards, and they have active, chats and things going on. There aren't necessarily, that may not be the same across the board, which basically means that I will say there are a lot of instructors who have become better Blackboard users, but it's still inconsistent. So how a professor structures a class within Blackboard, your English class may look very different from a math class, which may look very different from a psych class, which may look very different from fine arts, engineering, and on and on. So our levels of familiarity and comfort with technology vary among our professors, but that is where they will find all of their assignments. They will find the calendar. They'll find the syllabus, which is really the guide to every class. Probably the number one resource in a class is that syllabus. If a student doesn't know when something is due or has a question about an assignment or when something is happening or how it applies to the grade, the first question from the professor is, have you looked at your syllabus? And a lot of students are like, what's the syllabus? I don't even know. What are you talking about? Where can I find it? Can you show it to me? Can you email that to me? No, that doesn't happen. So your students will need to be checking and can check actually starting about a week prior. Some professors are super early and on the ball and will have their syllabus posted in Blackboard, 2 weeks early. I don't know that many get it much farther in advance than that, but have your students start checking their Blackboard about a week before classes begin. Some faculty will be that early. Some faculty will wait until the morning of the first class, and which, again, it varies. Our professors are great. They just, sometimes they're a little eclectic and kind of, they're on their own timeline and all of that good stuff. But we encourage them throughout the summer to be posting that information as early as possible. So if your student has questions about that, have them start getting familiar with Blackboard early as well. They cannot mess up the system. Click around. Alicia talks about this a lot. Just please, have them in there early to get familiar with it.
Yeah, and I that's exactly what I was going to say, Kim, is, you yourself as a parent as well as a student, really encourage them to familiarize themselves not only with Blackboard, but with their MyWSU account. There's so much information that's in there at their fingertips that they have no idea because they're scared that they're going to mess something up. I promise these three people right here that's on this call today, we've all gone in and we've played in it. We would have messed something up and fixed it by now if that was going to happen. And so, and Gina, really, she's like she's it. And so feel free, play around in there. If you have questions, know we're on standby. I also wanted to make sure that we list a really helpful page. And this is what I use as kind of like my secret, but it's not. If you go to wichita.edu/OneStop, at any given time, if you're like, well, what were they saying about Proxy, or what was that stuff about FERPA? If you don't remember what the website is, or you just have a general question of when should my bill be available? When should my student register for classes? How does my student drop a class? All that information is available at the OneStop website. And not only is it on the website, but they do a phenomenal job of adding screenshots. And so if you need something to, be walked, step by step, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be in there. If not, you can click to talk to an advisor, and someone will reach out to you if not available right away to follow up to make sure that we're getting you the assistance that you need to answer your questions. And so make sure you save that in your favorites. It's on mine and I use it all the time. So other things, Kim, in relation to communication, do you want to touch a little bit about email and the importance of email and notifications and all of that great stuff?
You bet. So the orientation information is really the last bit of information from the university that I know that goes to both a student's personal account or non-WSU account and their WSU account. They need to be making the switch over to checking their @shockers.wichita.edu email account. It's really, really important. And I know we are all inundated with email. We know it. We know we send a lot. But that is where they're going to get official communication. That's where they're going to know if something has changed on campus. That's where they're going to get email reminders about deadlines with financial aid, with advising, whatever that may be. That's the email that their professors are going to use in the classroom. So they really need to make a habit now of checking that. And we say, they need to be checking it. There are lots of instances when we're on the phone and mom says, well, I'm in his email right now and I don't see anything. So while we appreciate you all being proactive, we've got to make sure that the students are the ones managing their accounts. You should not have your students' password. You should not have your students sign in. They really need to be the owners of that information. And usually if we run across a student who says, my mom's checking my email, we will tell them, you need to change your password. Now, communication on the other end, that's y'all's business. But we need you as partners in this to make sure that they are the ones responsible with getting that information, reading it, and responding to it, because there are often steps, one little action item, or the three little, step 1, 2, 3 that students miss. And they come into our offices and they're like, well, I didn't know anything about that. And we flip our screens around and say, we've got tracked 3 different times when we reached out to you about this exact thing. And we cannot, give an exception, or we cannot move a deadline because you failed to respond to your email. So lots of things like that. Conduct notifications, waitlist notifications. That's a really, really important one. If your student is waitlisted for a class, they have a certain amount of time where they need to take action. And if they don't look at their email and they don't know that, I got the last spot in that chemistry class, then that goes to the next person on the wait list. And so it's really, really important that they are keeping up with that. So please help us be our partner in helping your student make sure that they understand the kind of information that is going to come to their account and the expectation that they're reading and responding to it. They might get if they run across someone who's having a really good day, then they might get an exception to something, but not often. If we have, provided outreach to your student for a particular whatever process or thing holds, for instance, on their accounts, we start really talking to students early about holds that are placed on their account and things that they can do before enrollment opens to clear up the holds that are on their accounts. And we are proactive about that. But then we get panicked. Now, I can't get into this class and I have this hold. Yes. Did you get the email we sent 5 weeks ago? Oh, yeah. Can you send that again? Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And so we send another one. We know, again, that it's overwhelming. You get a lot of information via email. We do too. We understand that. But that is a life skill that they need to own and learn about and respond to, because a lot of information is passed through email. And the reason for that, another reason, is because it is secure, right? They cannot forward that account to some, because that is, it's protected. keep privacy. We take privacy very, very seriously. And Gina is, yes, all over that, as are our folks in ITS. Your students don't want their information, given out or, in a leak of some sort. We don't want our information, in a leak of some sort or whatever. So they cannot put that into a Yahoo or a Gmail. Yahoo, I'm aging myself now. A Gmail or whatever. It used to be Juno, right? Like at juno.com. Anyway. So make sure that they understand that piece, because they'll check their Gmail. Oh, heck yeah, because that's where they're social. But their university account is protected, and that is why they cannot forward it to another. And that's why it's in, it's really, really important that they understand that. So
yeah, and I think that one of the biggest questions that we get here within the next couple of weeks, especially from parents, is, hey, I haven't heard anything about housing. What are we doing? What's going on? And so from this moment forward, once your student is registered for classes, guess what? They are the responsible party for their experience from this moment forward. And so communication with you is going to subside, and we are now going to move towards the student and having them take responsibility and action for what's to come moving forward. And so a lot of times when I get calls in our office saying, hey, we haven't heard anything about housing, what's going on? My first question is, has your student checked their email? And 9 times out of 10, it's waiting in the student's email account and they had no idea. And so ask them to get into the habit of checking it at least weekly. Of course, I would love them to check it daily, but weekly right now in the summertime would be okay, because they are getting a lot of information already. We have other sessions coming up where we'll talk more in depth about this, but what does the move-in process look like? How do I sign up for move-in? When should I have picked my room? All of these different things. And if your student's not checking their email, then they're going to sign up for those things late, which may not work with your schedule. And so making sure that they're being proactive and they're staying ahead and on top of their emails. And like Kim said, I think right now that the biggest piece is we're shifting from doing to coaching to moving from the sidelines. And unfortunately, sometimes that means that we have to watch our students fail in order for them to learn a lesson. And that's okay. And a lot of times when I talk with parents about this, they're like, what? Those of you who join us for orientation will hear the story about my student when she was telling me that it was a dress down day. And I was like, but it's not. And we get into the car, and I said, okay, I'm not going to argue. And we pull up, and everybody walking into the school had on a uniform. And the first thing she said was, Mom, don't do this to me. I said, baby, I didn't do anything. You did this to yourself. Now get out of the car and fix it. And she looked at me and I said, figure it out. And so she walked in, and I got a call later on from the principal saying, good job, Mom. Like, she got a demerit, but I bet she doesn't do this again. And she figured it out. She got a uniform from the nurse, whatever. But I think the important lesson is that moving forward, before she left the house with, regular clothes on for school, whatnot, she knew to go in and check it. I wasn't saying, oh no, babe, and so sometimes that's a hard lesson that we have to teach our students. And so knowing that sometimes failure is okay, so long as they learn from that. And a lot of that comes when Kim talked about communication and responding to things in a timely manner. Your students have so much support on our campus with individuals who are proactively reaching out to them on an ongoing time frame of making sure that their health and wellness is okay, making sure that they're on track academically, and that they're engaging in processes both in the classroom and outside. But if the students aren't responding to these communications and notifications, that's where we lose them. Earlier, Kim was talking about, if your student is coming home every weekend or if they're doing all these things, that's not what we want to see. We want to make sure that Wichita State feels like home, that this is where they feel like they fit and belong. Because if they're going home every weekend, if they're calling you every night and they have not found their tribe or their crew on campus that they can connect with and engage, they're not going to feel a part of our community. And so we want to know if that happens so that we can make sure that we get them connected on campus. I think, with Gina, Kim, and I think they can come back on board. But just knowing that there is an army of individuals on campus that is here to assist and really on standby. I mean, I look to Gina all the time. She has her own kid who's graduated and went through the system. Kim and I, our kids are coming up through the pipeline. And so it's really, when we talk about communication, we will send communication and things to parents once a month through our Shocker Family network listserv, our newsletter. Thank you, Em. And so that comes out once a month, so you can sign up for that online. But the biggest thing that I found to be, and a lot of our families have found to be really resourceful, is our Shocker Family Network social media page on Facebook. It's completely led by families. And these are other families whose students and they themselves as parents are experiencing or have experienced the things that you're going through. And so they create their own network. I loved one time there was a parent who was like, hey, I can't bring my kid back home for Thanksgiving. Anybody coming back to Texas that can give her a ride? And I'll cash app you gas. And so it was great that these parents are having this conversation. Does Shocker Hall give free toilet paper? All these different things, like, where's your kid doing laundry at? Like, something's happening. And so it's great that there's a community within a community that's there just to support you. And so make sure that you haven't already, go check it out, sign up, like, follow, share, all that great stuff. But we're all here on standby, ready to help you every step of the way.
Fun new fact for everyone who's moving in, laundry's free. What? Free laundry, which is huge, right? But please make sure they know how to do it, because there's a lot of students who just come to college and they don't quite know how much soap to put in.
We got a laundry story. Let me tell you.
So, but that's great, because that's something that, our students need and want, and sure makes them not have to worry about, do I have money on my card? Do I have quarters? What can I use? So that's a nice new thing. So I think we're at the end, it looks like, of our time. So any last, words of wisdom from either of you?
Yeah, so we have various sessions that are planned throughout the entire summer. And so Kim Sandlin and I will be co-hosting, yay. And so our next one is coming up on June 22nd, and our topic is COVID-19. So what can your students expect when they return to campus this fall? What precautions are we taking as an institution? And what does it look like for both the classroom, inside the classroom and outside, and testing requirements and expectations and all of those things. And so if you have time, or if that's some topic that you're interested in, join us on June 22nd, same time, same place. And we'll have our Director of Student Health, Camille Childers. She'll be joining us. She's been she's led us through this entire pandemic. Love her. She's done a phenomenal job, and she'll be with us to answer those questions direct. But if there's other topics that maybe you're interested in learning more about, or you just have general questions, feel free to send those to us at any time. But 9 times out of 10, check out our list online, because we probably have it coming down the pipeline. And we look forward to having you join us at other table talks.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Gina, for joining us as our weekly expert this week. So thank you.
Great job, ladies.
Yeah.
Go Shocks.
That's right. Go Shockers. All right. Thanks everybody.
Have a good day.